first things first, obviously the Greystones are immensely important to the story. When you go through it, you have one of the big aspects of the Greystones and also Faeriniel is Arladin's poem, and then a book that Sim reads when he's got a bet with Kavoth on what the purposes of Greystones are. They have a bet. So, like, for Arladin's poem, it was like a drawstone, even in our sleep, standing stone by old road is the way to lead you ever deeper into Fey. Lay stone as you lay, in hill or dell, Greystone leads to something else. Obviously, we postulate that leads to Faeriniel. And then with Sim's book, Sim's book divided into 3 categories. One supported his side, telling of pagan rites and animal sacrifices. The other speculated about an ancient civilization that used them as marker stones for roads, despite the fact that some were located on sheer mountainsides or river bottoms where no roads could be. His final book was interesting for other reasons. A pair of matched stone monoliths with a third across the top, Simon read. The locals refer to it as the doorpost. While spring and summer pageants involve decorating and dancing around the stone, parents forbid their children from spending time near it when the moon is full. One well-respected and otherwise reasonable old man claimed, Sim broke off reading, whatever, he said disgustedly and moved to close the book. Claim what? Willem asked, his curiosity piqued. Simon rolled his eyes and continued reading. Claimed at certain times men could pass through the stone door into the fair land where Felurian herself abides, loving and destroying men with her embrace. So, those 2 things, obviously, when it talks about, like, they call these markers roads, but some of them are on sheer mountain cliffs where no roads are. I think, obviously, it's that these are portals, and the roads are not literally roads. They're ways to travel from point A to point B, like teleportation, and rather than actually just walking the distance, where you can go from point A to point B by traveling through Greystones, whether into the Fey or you go in through one of these portals and exit out another, where you can exit out somewhere much further down the line. I think that is most likely what Greystones allow you to do, is travel from one place to another rather quickly.
Yeah, and also, just to throw this out there, with Kvoth's dad calling them or dreamlike drawstones, we have to realize that Kvoth is drawn to them all the time. Every aspect of his life, he's getting close to a drawstone or a waystone.
Yeah, they seem to definitely be big markers for his life, which also we kind of need that for the story in itself, because how it weaves in and out of the different parts of the world, moving into Fae, all that type of stuff. Yeah, the portal side of it definitely does seem to be what we're led to connect there, as far as I can tell.
And the phases of the moon, like I think that's obviously important. It's not like you can just walk up to these things and then you're just automatically transported. There's a reason why they keep their kids away from these things during full moons. Felurian talks about, like, traveling, if you want to get into the Fae, you can only do it at certain times. The time's got to be right. It's also hinted at in the poems, on the Lackless poems, on how to get through the Lackless doors, 7 things that Our Lady's Lackless's dress. Like, the time needs to be right. And so the phases of the moon is obviously important to being able to travel through these Greystone portals. But I think the book does a pretty clear job of demonstrating them as portals and not just artifacts of history. There's some much more going on with them than just like they're just old fucking stones that were built into the ground. There's something magical about them. Can I bring you back for
just 1 second, Dan? Because we're not there yet in the story, but when Kvoth goes and chases Felurian into the Fae, I can't remember. Is it nighttime? Is the moon out? Is there a Waystone present?
Yes, both times when he goes into the Fae and when he leaves the Fae, he goes through Greystones. So that was actually my second note to kind of solidify them as portals. So we see him travel in and out of the Fae through Greystone. So when he's going into the Fae, it says, Valyrian ahead of me, into the scrub, I dimly remember trees, the smell of earth, the gray of moonlit stone. The gray of moonlit stone. All right.
Yeah,
and then
right
when he
right
leaves
together.
the Fae, it says, she led me through the forest for hours until we came to a pair of tall Greystones. She drew the hood up. She drew up the hood of my shade and bid me close my eyes. Then she led me in a brief circle, and I felt a subtle change in the air. When I opened my eyes, I could tell that this forest was not the same one I had been walking through a moment before. The strange tension in the air was gone. This was the mortal world.
So Felurian was in Kavoth's world, and then Kavoth followed her to
Into
a
the
point where
Fae.
she took him into... Okay. I never pieced that together before, because there's a blurring in my mind of when that happens. I'm glad you read that, because a lot of times I felt like he just kind of chased her into it, but it wasn't that simple. He followed her, chased her, what have you, and then she brought him in.
Yeah, she drew him into the Fae. She was in their world, in the woods with them, and then she drew him into the Fae, and there was obviously a gray stone involved with the gray of moonlit
all pieces
stone.
of it, yeah.
And
Yeah,
you have the
yeah.
moonlit stone, so it's clear that it's making clear that it's Greystones and the moon is involved. And when he leaves the Fae, it's also Greystones, where he's in one place, he's in the Fae, and then all of a sudden he's back in the mortal world, which is different. And so he goes through a portal, and she makes him close his eyes, so there's something to it. There's some aspect of getting out of the Fae that she must not have wanted him to know how to get out of the Fae, or something along those lines that he needed. Or it could be that in order to get out of the Fae, he had to fucking keep his eyes closed, and if he saw it, it would have messed it up. I don't know. But it seems like she might have been trying to keep the knowledge of how to get out of the Fae once he's in there. Keep that knowledge out of his mind, so that maybe when he goes back, if he goes back to see her, that she could keep him in there so he wouldn't know how to get out. But there's something she did that she didn't want him to see on an added step that's needed to get out of the Fae.
It was the hokey pokey.
More than likely. More than likely. That's the...
Turn yourself around.
I bet it'd be really interesting to see, if there was, a map of the Fae itself. It feels like there would be these markers. The Greystones would be these markers where you pass between different segments and different places, and kind of seems like it's mapped out through those markers, perhaps.
What's interesting about it is if you travel in a straight line in the Fae, they say you'll go and it'll keep getting darker and darker and darker until it's pitch black, and then if you keep walking long enough, you'll eventually walk into sunlight, and it will get brighter and brighter, and you'll end up back where you started eventually, just walking in a straight line. So it's a weird place.
Well, that interestingly enough, that happens in our world, right?
No.
If you walk long enough.
If you keep walking, eventually it's going to get brighter.
Actually, how's that even possible?
If you walk for 1 day.
Well, you could stand, or you could just stand.
It's not
if you just
possible.
stand in place.
Look, all right. So you have the planet. It's a flat surface, and if you walk from one end to the other, you would just fall off. How would you what do you want? You walk to one end of a piece of paper, and then you flip upside down and walk across to the other end of the paper, and then flip back up. No, that's not how.
If there's a gravitational force, is there a gravitational force on this paper?
What's that?
Does the paper have a gravitational force pulling towards it?
You guys don't. You don't understand fucking physics and fucking astral planes. Look, here's how the world works. There's a big flat surface, and it goes on for infinity. So if you start walking in one area, you'll eventually walk into ice, and then it's just ice forever from there.
There's a big flat surface that goes on for infinity?
Yes.
That's what the Earth is? It's
Fucking
never
morons.
ending? Does anyone hold that theory?
Why don't you learn a book? Learn a book.
learn a book.
Morons.
Is there a book that has that theory in it?
Probably one of those fucking round earther morons.
Is there a book that has the theory that the Earth is infinite? Because I haven't heard that one.
Astral.
Yeah. I'm not even joking. That's
I like the astral
of
plane.
of the on the flat Earth theory. Like that is one of the theories, is that it is an infinite plane. I'm not even joking. Like that is literally one of the theories they postulate.
Well,
that seems
explain the Sahara.
That seems very arrogant in a way. Is part of it like real? Like this is it. This is all there is. Whatever. I don't know how we got on this.
Learn a book. That's all I got to say about it.
I love you coming back to learn a book. Well, I've learned. What do you mean learn a book? You can read a book. Learn a book. Did you learn the name of the wind? Have you learned the name of the wind?
Okay, Globetard.
That sounds like something that somebody would say. Globetard. That's really funny. That's a really funny diss.
Hot 'em globe tartars.
All right, but back at it, like Kavoth also, as far as the Greystones, he dreams about the Greystones as portals. So he says, in his dream, when he's in the wood after his parents dies, and he falls asleep in the woods, he has a dream, and in that dream, Arladin and Abinthy talk about Greystones. So we get, why do we stop at Waystones? Tradition, mostly, but some people say they marked old roads. My father's voice changed, it became Ben's voice. Safe roads, sometimes roads to safe places, sometimes safe roads leading into danger. Ben held one hand out to it, as if feeling the warmth of a fire, but there is a power in them. Only a fool would deny that. So we get them described as portals, being able to travel from point A to point B as roads.
And the fact that it's also called a Waystone.
Yes.
Not Weigh, but Way. Yeah, it's quite clear. He does a really good job of maintaining some mystery about it, because of how people talk about it.
There has to be something significant. I mean, he names his bar the Waystone Inn. Something significant is going to happen with Waystones, and all the information we get on them is that they are portals, they're roads to travel from one place to another. And we also get, he dreams of a circle of Greystones. So he says, then Ben was no longer there, and there was not one standing stone, but many, more than I had ever seen in one place before. They formed a double circle around me. One stone was set across the top of two others, forming a huge arch with thick shadow underneath. I reached out to touch it. Farenel also has a circle of Greystones.
I was going to say, man, he dreams about very important things, man.
Yes.
Like,
just in that one, like I can't think of anything important in any of his other dreams, but that one is significantly important. Like in that dream, he dreams about what he needs to survive, and then he dreams about Waystones, Greystones, whatever you want to call them, and then he also dreams about knots, which to me, the way they describe them, like we talked about in that episode, is they describe them, it sounds like he's talking about Yllish knots, not sailor's knots.
Yeah.
The way he talked about, like, the binding will be either the strongest or the weakest point, depending on, how you tie the knot.
So, is just, if you could touch on it real quickly, maybe some of the other aspects of Yllish knots that are talked about.
I only
remember that Denna had them in her hair that said she was beautiful.
Well, there's Denna's hair, but there's the box. There's the lackless box seems to have some significance with Yllish knots in terms of how he can feel. I think he also brings it up when he's touching the box, right?
Yeah, like the biggest aspects of Yllish knots is when he's feeling the lackless box that Maelwyn gives him. He says, like, if he felt like if he could read Yllish knots, he'd be able to know what is written on the box. And so when he goes back to the university, he starts studying Yllish knots. And that's how when he sees Denna and she's got a knot tied in her hair that says, a Yllish knot tied in her hair that says beautiful, he's able to read it. And she even remarked, like, you're not supposed to be able to just read it by sight. You're supposed to have to feel it. And he's like, well, I have, for the way he's learned how to do it, he's like, I have to learn it by sight instead. I'm reading it in a book. I can't feel the knot, so I'm just looking at the pictures. And so I think the Yllish knots are going to, obviously, because of the way it's written, it seems like it's clear that the Yllish knots are going to be important as far as opening the Lackless box. I think that's clearly got to be the main purpose of Yllish knots, how it's going to play into the book.
It's super cool if you've ever looked at a book of like sailor's knots. It does have some sort of like, there's an art to it.
Yeah, all the time. All the time I'm looking at them.
Okay. Well, but I mean,
read sailor knot books like fucking
there is
at least one a week.
All right. If you ever go anywhere, any sort of nautical museum or something like that, and you stumble upon it, you'll see there's a lot of different varieties of sailor knots, and it's quite ingenious of Rothfuss to make like a language out of it or an art form.
You visit that Sailor's Knot Museum, Dan?
Yeah.
I don't know where I came across this, but I've seen
you go to the library and you pick up a book on sailor's knots and you just plowing through it. It's super interesting, really good.
Dude, it might be, you know what? It might be if you go to Bubba Gump's, it might be on the table. I don't know. That there's somewhere that I've come across a bunch of images of knots. You guys, you just got to get tapped into your nautical senses.
Hey, Tim, I'll vouch for you. I've got a shadow box that's got different knots in it. It's cool.
You know what, man?
I love the mention of it so nonchalantly, like it's a normal thing. Like, if you're reading a book on sailor's knots, like, who the fuck's just don't have books on sailor's knots?
You guys aren't tapped into your maritime backgrounds, huh? You don't have any lineage that spent time on the high seas.
Oh man,
I don't know. It's left me if there ever was any. It's gone.
But
that's too bad.
Back as far as the Circle of Greystones, it's reminiscent on the story he tells about Skiop traveling in Faeriniel. At one point he says, so he walked through the center of Faeriniel, and as he did, he saw a circle of great Greystones. I cannot imagine that Rothfuss had Kavoth dream about a circle of Greystones and then tell a story about Skiop in Faeriniel seeing a circle of Greystones, and those things are not connected, that they're not the same place. That seems too on the nose.
Remind
for them
me,
to be different.
Who tells the story?
Kavoth.
Kavoth tells the story about
Will
Skiop.
and Sim. Like they ask him for a story, so he tells a story about Skiop in Faeriniel, and Skiop, he runs into people from Aether, from
okay.
Seals. He runs into a Siridae. He runs into a number of different groups, and they all turn him away. And then it's when he finally runs into the Rue, they take care of him and they give him food and water, and then he tells his story and mesmerizes them. But the reason he tells them that story is like there's some kernels of truth in it if you're paying attention. That's the way Rothfuss writes it. It's like he basically says there's some kernels of truth if you're paying attention. And he's like, you can learn how to interact with the Rue. If you run across one of them, you ask for water, and you might get in this dance where, the more extravagant, they, offer you wine. And you come back with, more extravagant ways to just demand water, and eventually they'll give you both, and they'll know you're one of the family. But I think also Rothfuss was giving a little hint to us that there's something more important to this story. It's not just a fucking... Because it would just be such a meaningless story other than, like, you get how to interact with the Rue, which why would that be useful?
Well, it does.
It's not useful for us, and it's not useful for the character we're following, because obviously Kavoth already knows how to interact with the Rue, so that information is not going to be important.
It does build out the Rue as being good people, because we get it. We get an interesting. It's not, it's very much heavily weighted towards people shitting on the Rue throughout the books, rather than, and the people in the highest of places hold the Rue in high esteem, but most don't. So it does a bit of that. It kind of weighs that balance back in the reader's mind. But no, I hear you. Yeah, I believe that there is more to it.
It plays into when he runs across the fake Rue troop. They offer him wine. Right. He asks for water, and then they're like, how did you know? We knew offer wine before water and play songs before dinner. Like, we knew your customs. So it came into play in that respect. But I don't think, I think because of Arladin's poem that it's likely Faeriniel. I think the circle of Greystones that he dreams about, and the circle of Greystones in Faeriniel. And then also when they talk about that, like the book Sim finds talks about these places being roads to travel from point A to B. The dream he talks about, these are roads that can lead you to safe places, can lead you to bad places. They describe them as roads. And then also in the story about Faeriniel that he tells, he goes, there is a place not many folk have seen, a strange place called Faeriniel. If you believe the story, there are two things that make Faeriniel unique. First, it is where all roads in the world meet. Second, it is not a place any man has ever found by searching. It is not a place you travel to. It is a place that you pass through while on your way to somewhere else. They say that anyone who travels long enough will come there. This is a story of that place and an old man on a long road and of a long and lonely night without a moon.
So I can pinpoint exactly a few things that you just said that point to it being one of these Easter eggs. But as I read through it the first time, like it's another one of these times that, and you guys just alluded to it, speculation on whether it could be. There's no question in my mind that these are clues to something else going on with X, Y, or Z. I don't know how Rothfuss does it exactly, except that now I see that he's dropped these hints about the moon and the ways, the roads. But it's just like the dream. There's a certain aspect to it. It's almost like the story comes to a stop for this piece of information that he's presenting to us, and he presents it in a way that makes the story stop and become different, that it makes you think that there's a clue to it. Do you guys agree? I mean,
yes, I certainly think there's a clue to it. I think one of the big pieces of information from it is it's where all the roads in the world meet. So when they talk about, like in Sim's book, like the Waystones are markers to roads, but like some of them are on cliff tops and some of them are at the bottom of lakes, and like I think it's because you can, if you get into Faeriniel, I think you can travel to any of these Waystones. Maybe some of them are not active anymore, but I think it's that you at least in the past could go into Faeriniel and travel from point A to point B anywhere in the world. It was like a place that's on a different plane. It's different. It's not the Fae. It's not the regular world. It's a place where it's like a train station where you go there and then you can travel to all the other Waystones and you can go across the world.
It's like a warp zone on
Yes.
Mario.
Yes.
Like a warp zone. I gotcha.
Yes. Very much like Mario Brothers warp zones.
It's a terminal. I mean, it's a terminal that leads to
kind of like the Matrix in the third Matrix when he's trapped in that fucking train terminal.
I don't remember that.
No, you're just worthless.
Nice.
Harry Potter.
Yeah, probably.
It's also like Harry Potter. It's kind of a Matrix Harry Potter thing going, where you can travel
so
on
if
these, train stations.
So ski ops there on a night with no moon.
Yeah, which would make sense is if you need a full moon to travel into the Fae, that would mean the moon is full in their world, and so when you travel into the Fae or to Faeriniel, there would be no moon.
Interesting.
So I think that it so perfectly aligns with what we know about. They talk about don't want to be near these when a full moon. Well, when there's a full moon in his world, there is no moon in the Fae.
So my guess. Say that?
Well, yeah, we learned that when he's in because he's like, I haven't seen the moon in a while, and I'm just surprised to see it. And she's like, yeah, it was in your world. So when the moon is full in his world, there is no moon in the Fae, or vice versa. When the moon is full in Faeriniel, it's a moonless night in his world.
So most likely, it sounds like Denna is really, knocking out those hours as, the district manager of those Jack in the Boxes in that time where we're waiting the phases of the moon out. Then she dips back in. She comes back out, dips back in. So that's when she's really logging, heavy hours.
They're not going to get that reference because this will come out before the. It's one to look forward to. The Jack in the Box theory. Look forward to it. It's a really good one. It's probably not going to. I think it comes up in like episode 15. So you're close, but you're not there yet. So
yeah, it's
one to look forward to.
But yeah, it's this is something that I'd been wanting to sort of delve further into because it is so evident throughout, but there's so much mystery to it. There's these and they're not really parallel universes, or maybe they kind of are, right? They share the same world, right? They're in the same time frame, although it seems like in the Fae time is very much different. Yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. There's these little rules, and that's what we're talking about, right? Is how you can get in, how you can get out, and how there are people like Felurian that basically, they live there, or Bass that lives there, but then comes out.
One of the big mysteries that in Dan, I think we've talked about it before, but one of the big mysteries as far as the Fae goes is like why was there a war between the Shapers and the Namers? And I know it had to do with Ajax, but like
we know the basics of the war.
Much.
I mean,
there's
the Namers thought what the Shapers were doing was wrong, and then he says Felurian says there was a chance for peace, but then Ajax stole the moon, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So we know the basics of what was going on. The Namers philosophically disagreed with what Shapers were doing. There's something...
And what the Shapers were doing was building the Fae, though, right?
Ajax largely built the Fae, yeah, but they were doing, I think, more than that. I mean, I think that was one of probably their biggest thing was... I think, it could be that the Shapers were trying to create new things, that whatever shaping the power it is, they were using it, and the Namers disagreed with it. So it could be that Ajax was like, well, fuck you guys, I'll create my own world that is separate from you guys. And then so he built the Fae, and then for whatever reason, he decided to fucking steal their moon. And they were like, nah, that's my motherfucking moon.
Okay.
And so
he's big into cheese.
Gangster after that.
He's a big cheese guy. Yeah.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie. See? That's where that song comes from.
That's where it comes from?
Yeah. It was Ajax. He loved the moon so much. He was like, when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. He was in love with the moon. Where else does that song come from? That's Rothfuss ripping wherever that song came from.
Homage.
He homaged that song.
Well, Dean
he just
Martin
he basically stole the plot of that
States.
song. That song was a love story with the moon, and he just stole that and fucking put it in the book. Another thing that he homaged. He's homaging the shit out of this book. He's homaging everything.
You guys are making so much sense out of this stuff for me. It's just really coming together.
The last thing I wanted to say on Greystones was there's multiple mention of like actual Greystone doors, like 2 Greystones with one on top forming a door. Kavoth dreams about one. Sim's book talks about one, and then in Traben they see one. That's what they sleep on top of one. That is 2 Greystones with one on top. That's where they hide from the Dracus and sleep. That's what they sleep on top of. So those definitely seem like portals. Like, I don't know if all the Greystones used to be like that, or if there's something distinct about that makes them different when they're an actual door standing, 2 standing with one on top. If that makes it different, but in Sim Story they call it a doorpost. It could be that there's something different when there's a reason why those are stacked that way. Maybe that is when they're stacked that way. That's how you access Faeriniel, or and if it's just like a single post or one laying on the ground, maybe that's just you can go out of a place from that, but you can't get in. But there's got to be something to the reason why some of them are doors and some of them aren't. I don't have a good answer on it, but it's just something. There's multiple mentions of ones that are shaped like doors. There's multiple mentions of ones that are just solo. So there's got to be something that's differentiating those 2.
Yeah, the ones that are solo, I should say they're so big and noticeable that when we see one that's either solo standing up or on its side, you would have to see that if there was 3 of them forming a doorway, I would think that you'd see all 3 of them, or at least, but a lot of times we both comes across one. The Rue stop because they come across just one. So yeah, seems like there's a difference between the 2, or at least both exist separately.
They do seem ancient, right? So there's also that passage of time that your imagination, at least my imagination, sort of pictures that, they can move over time. I mean, one can be toppled over, something can happen, so.
Or
there's also,
or it could be, or it could be that they were knocked out on purpose. So
what it could be is maybe they were all like doorways at one time, and then like some have been toppled over, and now those are no longer usable. So the only ones you can go through. But like when he goes in and out of the Fae with Felurian, he doesn't mention like a doorpost. He doesn't mention 2 of them stacked with one on top. So he just mentions Greystones, but he doesn't specifically. It still could be that they were doorposts. He just didn't spell it out for us. But it could be that the only ones that are still left standing like doorposts, those are the only ones that are still usable. But there's got to be some reason that some are doorposts and some aren't, and there has to be something to it. It could be as simple as the ones that are doorposts, that's how they always were, and then through time they've got knocked over and moved around and shit like that, and now the only ones that are usable are the doorposts. But it could be something completely different. There could be something more meaningful on why some are doorposts and some aren't. There's no real clue in the book, though. But it's something to focus on moving forward.
There's those references too to the university looking like Greystones, or the archives, and certain doors appearing like a Greystone, actual doors. I feel like, I don't know if it was the cell that held Elodin had that, or if it was just the door in the archives.
It was the archives, looked like a giant Greystone.
Giant Greystone, yeah, and it had no seams or anything and all that. So it almost, I wonder if that was
the 4-plate door. That's the 4-plate door.
Yeah.
But the actual archives, it looked like a giant Greystone
itself. Oh, okay, yeah, which is interesting. I mean, that kind of wonder, did they build the archives around a Greystone? Is a Greystone literally part of the
Yeah, that'll be part of what we're gonna go into. Is I think we can kind of narrow down what's going on, why it looks like a Greystone. I think we've got enough information to kind of give at least a guess.
So I'll just throw this out because you're talking about buildings that are built out of Greystones. That those guys' house on from the wedding party,
Mothin Farm.
That guy, that guy built his house out of the Greystones, right?
Seems like it.
So what were there were barrows. So it's like how you bury people in like that type of land, right?
Yeah, they start digging stuff up.
Like crypts, basically.
Yeah, we haven't covered that. I mean, we'll be covering that here, and like as far as the audience, we were last episode we recorded was episode 18, so we're moving back from episode 18. So episode 19, we'll dive into Traben and the actual, the farm and the Chandrian, and go into the Mothin farm. But yeah, it seems like the house that they built, they partially built it out of Greystones.
Yeah, it was I apologize for jumping ahead. There was a lot of Waystone talk in that. I mean, there's the Waystones that you mentioned that they slept on, and when they're at the Barrow Hill, they look and they see that it's an archway. And anyway, it's just fresh on my mind anyway.
Yeah,
yeah, and what it seems like is Mothin was one reckless son of a bitch.
Yeah,
he did not seem like a careful guy. Like
well, it's kind of like Arladin with his song. Like he just thinks it's superstitious bunk. Like all the worry over it. Obviously, it blew up in his face. He was wrong. Yeah. He should have been more careful. And so, like, if you live in this world and you're like, oh, that's fucking just superstitious nonsense. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to use this fucking perfectly good stone because people fucking are fucking superstitious.
That's kind of strange for Arladin as a character. I mean, I understand characters have different traits. It's just
it paints him as an educated man that
like
would
a realist.
That would think like, I'm more worldly, I'm more knowledgeable. I'm not these simple fucking bumpkins that are, scared of fucking goblins in the night. I'm smarter than them. I know the shape of the world, and so I know that they, what they fear is they're just children's stories. And so like that makes sense to me as a character because that's how he comes off.
So I guess Kavoth is actually quite lucky to have seen his entire family killed by the Chandrian, because that means he gets to know the truth, while everybody else are fools.
Yeah, that's how
he was lucky.
He was lucky.
But what I mean is,
he had a very lucky childhood.
What I mean is, he would be the same sort of fool.
Yes,
if that didn't happen, he'd be walking around.
He kind of
like,
is
I know
still.
better.
He kind of even with his knowledge and what he's seen, he's still very dismissive of things. Like when he saw the name of the wind, and then like when he hears like Elodin like talk about naming, he's like, when he's talking to Kilvin about like Kilvin's like, if Elodin were here, it would have been a different matter. He could have called the name of the fire and fucking took care at the fire in the fishery. He's like, he could have called the name of the fire and took care of it with, relative ease. And he's like, it's fucking storybook shit. And he's like, where do you think these stories come from?
Yeah.
Like, even after he's seen someone call the name of the wind, he saw Elodin call the name of stone or whatever and bring down a wall.
Yeah.
And he's learning magic. And even still, he's like, like he could have just called the name of fire and controlled it? It's fucking nonsense.
Is that before Elxadal kind of walked him through his mastery?
Before Elxadal like called the name of fire for him. But he's already seen enough where he shouldn't be so dismissive of things he's ignorant of. But it's a human characteristic of
I was going to say
things you're ignorant of that you would be dismissive dismissive of it.
But I was going to say, I mean, even seeing Elodin basically pull Taborlin the Great, I would still imagine you're still living in this. You still have all that time that you lived before where that didn't exist. So maybe it takes some time to shake off that muscle memory of what's real and what's not, or what's capable and what's not, right?
Yeah.
What's possible. Yeah, it's I mean, that's a testament to Rothfuss, man, and how interesting, those limitations are. Plus, we always fall back on. I mean, it makes a lot of sense for Kvothe to be the age he is because he is learning and he is developing, and he should be arrogant because of how capable he is, how outstanding he is at every single thing that he even attempts. Right, so that would blend in with this, overzealousness and how confident he should be in what he thinks he knows.
Yeah, he needs a little bit more humility, like me, where he's got all that capability and all that power and all that knowledge, but he should be a little bit more humble to understand that, hey, I have seen someone call the name of the wind. I have seen someone call the name of stone. I've seen some pretty fucking unbelievable magic. Like, the idea that someone can call the name of the fire should not be preposterous. He needs that. He needs one of our shirts on the humility shirt.
Just to remind him, keep that constant reminder. I mean, think about that though. I mean, I know we thought about it, or you've thought about it when you read those Elk Sadal chapters, but to control fire, it's a big weapon.
Yeah. Pretty badass fucking power if you could just like call fire and just fucking go set those guys on fire. That's not a guy you would want to fuck with. You don't want to fight that guy.
Yeah.
Like if you picked a fight with him, like standing in the line at Burger King, like you're in trouble. You made a mistake.
Burger King?
Yeah. Cut
Why
you
is
in
that
line
the setting?
And you're like, hey buddy,
the flame grilled
you cut
Whopper.
me. You cut me. Oh, you want a flame burger? I'll give you a fucking flame burger. Boom.
That's all it takes. Fire. That's all it takes. Getting cut in line at Burger King.
Yeah. And then, look, dude, if you can call the name of fire like you wouldn't cut people in line at Burger King, like, yeah, I would cut everybody.
If you can call the name of fire, I don't think you're eating at Burger King.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be making your own frame grilled Whoppers.
It's King, Burger King. What are you getting? Some inferior fucking burger? What are you? Oh, I eat at Prince Burger. I like to step down. No, I eat fucking
Prince
the King
Burger.
of
Were
burgers,
those in
Burger
Minneapolis?
King. What kind of fucking low class fucking loser? What kind of burgers
sandwiches.
are you eating? Fucking weirdo.
Dutch's chicken sandwich. Yeah.
I eat the Duke fucking fish fillet.
Count Chocula?
Yeah. I like me some Count fish fillets.
I only eat royal food. I eat Count Chocula and Burger King because I'm so fancy.
Dude, you cannot fucking you cannot get a better burger. It's called the King for a reason. Fucking, this is stupid. This is stupid argument. Like we
with an RC.
There's no, why would you name your place Burger King if you didn't
there
have
you
the
go.
fucking King of Burgers?
With a Royal Crown Cola and some sweet
RC
and some Hawaiian King rolls.
There you go. Is this going to make it on the cutting room floor, Dan?
Yeah. Fucking, I mean, want everybody fucking know like where to fucking go to get a good burger.
Oh my God.
And make sure that they don't cut in line.
Dan's got a sponsorship from Burger King, apparently.
Burger King, the king of burgers. Delicious.
All right. Anything else on the old Greystone?
No, the next thing I want to go in.